What's up, guys? Coach Jared here with the Unfair Advantage podcast. Today's guest is a very special guest, probably one of the best athletes that I've ever met, and I'm not just saying that. Behind me, of course. And yeah, this is my good friend Mason Palmer. Mason is going to be one of the top, 98 now, right? Weightlifters in the United States. I've known Mason since he wasn't very good at weightlifting. And he spent a lot of time training in a lot of different places under a lot of different coaches. He has a really cool background in, youth sports as well. And he's just got a really cool story that I think a lot of people want to hear. So I'll let Mason introduce himself.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I'm nervous.
You're nervous? Bro.
A little bit.
Yeah. Mason's 20. Well, you're 27, right?
27, yep.
And I know I met you when you were like just getting out of college a little bit, and you had moved down or you were getting ready to move down to Texas, right?
Yep.
So you went to UNI.
Right.
So yeah, you take over. You take over the story.
So I'm the oldest of five. We did a little moving around growing up, and both my parents went to UNI. That's where they met. So, everything ended up coming back to Cedar Falls eventually. I went to UNI. My siblings now either go to or have graduated from UNI. About 2.5 years in, decided this is probably not the best route for me. So I ended up just moving back home. And right around that time is when I found weightlifting and just fell in love with it. So decided to just go all in on that. That was around 2020 was when, COVID hit. That's when we kind of went full throttle. And when I say we, AJ, myself, a couple other guys, we got after it a whole bunch.
In the garage, right?
In the garage, yep. AJ's garage during COVID. And so we just trained all day, every day, and ended up doing, it was U25 Nationals in 2021. And that is when I met Brittany Rucker,
okay,
head coach, owner of Bear Barbell. And so she's based out of San Antonio. I ended up, meeting her there. She filled in as my coach. I did really bad. It ended up being great because, I met her, basically just spilled my guts after the meet, and she invited me to come to San Antonio, and I packed my bags a couple months later and moved down there. So that was end of 2021 is when I moved to San Antonio. So I was there for 2 years before moving to Knoxville, Tennessee, and trained under Wes Kitts, lived with Morgan McCullough, trained with, Josh McGee, Hutton Bulls, so some killers down there, and then ended up moving back here just over a year after being there, and that brings us here now. So moved back in September of this past year.
Moved back to Cedar Falls.
Yes,
and
that's
you
right.
come down here maybe once a month or so,
Yep.
I'd say, and it's because right now you're training out at like a CrossFit gym, right?
Yep.
So kind of training solo. So it's nice to come and, train with other weightlifters
100%.
once in a while, right?
Right.
On some weightlifting equipment.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So Mason, it's a pretty cool story because a lot of our athletes at some point, they realize that maybe they're not going to play a college sport, or they go to college to play a sport and they realize they don't want to do that anymore. And I think that's a great time to maybe think about weightlifting, right? And, we don't push anybody down that direction. It's more like we let them kind of come to us. But some of our best weightlifters are athletes that we started training for like other sports. They're very good athletes, but, certain genetic factors, maybe height, maybe, certain abilities, mobility, whatever it is, doesn't allow them to probably go to the next level with that sport. So they want something to still compete in, and weightlifting's like a kind of a natural, I think, progression. So is that kind of what it was for you too? Yeah,
I mean, I didn't touch a barbell until I was 18, 19.
Because you're a basketball player.
Right. Growing up, basketball was like, that was just my whole life, everything. My first memories would, playing
Same.
on a tyke suit. You know what I mean? And basketball was the main one, but really it was just whatever season it was. That's what sport I was playing.
Yep.
And that was, you know, from as early as I can remember to through high school. And I loved the competition aspect. I loved the community, having people around that like the same thing and you're pushing for the same things. And my favorite part was the potential to get better. You know, it was like that. It was just, if I could always see myself past where I was, you know, and it was just whatever it was track, it was football, it was basketball, you know, it was always, I just wanted to be in the gym doing that, you know, because that's what I loved. I didn't want to do school, you know. I did what I had to do to play sports, you know. And that was it. So, you know, after I graduated high school, I knew I wasn't going anywhere to play sports. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't really even hit my growth spurt until 19. And so it was just something to pursue that I could. First of all, I loved it. You know, when I started weightlifting, it was just I was so bad at it. That was part of it. I was so bad at it, and I knew, you know, the first competition we went to up in Minnesota, real small competition, that I think the guy that won went like 125, 150. You know, and I saw that happen when I was snatching, you know, 80 kilos and clean jerking like 120, being like, man, I know I could do that. You know, so it's that kind of gets me hooked to sports and really anything. You know, it doesn't matter what it is, like pickleball, you know, so like ping pong, like it doesn't matter. You know, I eat that stuff up. So, yeah, I didn't like lifting weights in high school just because for me, I would rather be playing the sport. You know what I mean? And I didn't really, you know, I should have lifted weights. I should have done all those things, but I didn't. And I think for me, just the lifting part just was so hard and it hurt. And I didn't like that. You know what I mean? And part of the reason I like basketball so much was if you hit me, you know, it was a foul. Like in football, I like football, but a little less because, you know, I was getting crushed by these boys. And so, yeah, I mean, in UNI too, you know, played all the intramurals, did all that stuff, started up a volleyball club with my buddy and did that for a few years. That was a blast. And, yeah, and then, you know, weightlifting, that was really the first time I ever took lifting serious, you know. And I think doing all of the basketball and track and volleyball really helped me create mobility that I don't think, you know, maybe I wouldn't have had if I wouldn't have done all those things. And
maybe kinesthetic awareness, like a lot of that, right?
100%. Yep. And I enjoyed, I was pretty good at like jumping, you know, and like just being quick. And so that translates pretty well into weightlifting. But of course, you know, I started out with my strength numbers just being, you know, at zero essentially.
Well, you're also really tall.
Right.
I mean, for a weightlifter, you're very tall. What are you?
6'3".
Yeah. So 6'3", especially at his weight class. I mean, when I first met you, I think you were competing at 89, right?
This will be the first meet.
Yeah.
I'm not an 89.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you were past when the weight classes changed to 89, right? You didn't do 85, right?
No, that would have been, what year did they make that change? Because
it would have been late in 2018.
Yeah,
I think,
so that
or 2019.
was right before I got into.
Because I know that was my best ever meet. I actually don't have I don't know if I ever competed in person at 89. Like there was like the COVID meets, like, you know, at 89 that I did like online, but yeah, so I was in 85,
right? And
then they switched, and that I didn't like that because it's like now I'm competing against guys like you, right? It's just a little different. So, anyways, going back to basketball though, like a lot of people know, like that's my background too, and it's very rare, I think, in weightlifting to see that. Like, there's not a ton of guys that make that progression. It's usually football. It's usually wrestling. I think you see a lot of maybe, I mean, gymnastics, CrossFit, like, is the big one, obviously. And I went that route too at first. But I think that basketball, again, I'm a little biased, but I think it teaches a lot more like hand-eye coordination and kinesthetic awareness than most sports do. And I think that really served me well in learning snatch and clean and jerk. And I think, just like you said, when I first started doing it, I was like, wow, I'm really bad at this. And I wasn't used to that. Like, I'm sure you had a similar experience where, like, most sports you'd probably pick up pretty quick and at least be decent at them,
Right.
like within a pretty quick, period of time. And weightlifting was like, oh wow, like I am horrible at this. And like, it's just really cool. It's like, this is like something that I can tell it takes a lot of skill. And I think that's what, because I had a similar experience to you where I didn't lift weights until I was out of high school. Again, I think basketball is just, it wasn't, back in the day, it was not really pushed where you should lift weights.
Oh, no, 100%. I mean, it was almost the opposite.
It was taboo.
You don't want to get big and bulky because then you get slow and you won't be able to jump.
Or
inside.
it'll throw your shot off.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, if you get too strong, or if you lift in the morning, like your shot's going to be off. Right. Which of course, like if you go and do a bunch of bench press and then you go to immediately shoot, but it's anyways. So yeah, I didn't lift weights till I was out of high school. But again, I think that my background I played basketball, baseball, golf in high school instead of football. I played football up through 8th grade. Tried to stay healthier for basketball. But again, I think all those sports, now, they did not help my mobility. That was my biggest thing. Like, I felt like my mobility would have been better if I did maybe wrestling or something like that, or if I just actually stretched and like did mobility. So I struggle with that. But as far as like being able to see somebody do something, because I self-taught myself, and I'm sure you did it at the beginning too, right? Like, you kind of watch YouTube videos. And as far as that goes, I think that comes from my basketball experience, because when I was growing up, I would just watch basketball and I would try to emulate guys, right? Like, my guy was Tracy McGrady. I don't know if everybody knows that. Like, I'm like a diehard T-Mac fan. So like, I would just watch him, and like, I watched every game, and I would just try to like do what he did. Now, we're built slightly differently, so things started to change a little bit as I got older. But that's what I did, and that's how I got better. And then you kind of do the same thing in weightlifting. Like, I would pick a guy that I really enjoyed, like his style, and then you try to lift like them, right? And I think it's a good way to start. And then you usually find things that maybe are your style. You put your flair on it, but I think that's a great way to kind of start.
100%. Yeah, Derrick Rose, that was my guy.
That was your guy.
Oh yeah, 100%. He was. Yeah, I mean, just
you guys
the
are actually probably the same height.
Yeah,
he might be a little shorter than you.
I think he's 6'4", listed at 6'4".
Okay.
So yeah, we might be the same. I think they pumped those numbers up a little bit. But regardless, yeah, same. I would just watch Derrick Rose highlights. You know, when he was 2008 to 2012. You know, prime Derrick Rose. That was like, I was 6th through 8th grade. You know, and that was every time I'd go out and shoot or do whatever,
I'm D Rose.
I was just playing D Rose highlights in my head and doing that, and yeah, it's exactly right. And in weightlifting, funny enough, AJ had a lot of influence on me when I first got in, and he was a big Wes Kitts guy. He was, Wes was kind of first on the scene in 2016-ish, and so he was still, big deal around that 2019, 2020 time. And so we would watch all the Cal Strength videos, and then we got into, the Shankle and the John Norths and, all that kind of stuff. And that's just that energy, the environment. It was like it was like the last minute of a close basketball game, every lift, every tense, it had that intense energy, and that drew me to it. And,
I think the other thing with weightlifting is there's never I think a little bit tired of certain aspects of team sports. Being from a small town, I feel like I dealt with a lot of political stuff. And like, again, it's such an objective sport, right? It's like, hey, if I lifted more weight than you, I'm better than you, right? Or I win, right?
Right.
Versus basketball, it's like, oh, well, he's a great scorer, but he doesn't hustle, or he doesn't, like, there's certain aspects that maybe his rebounding is not great, and they try to like nitpick and take certain things away from you, and or like your attitude, or whatever. And it's a much more, you can justify as a coach or whatever of like, I'm not playing this athlete because of this, versus like weightlifting's like, you could say like, hey, why is he playing over me? Well, because of this, right? Even if my stats are better. Weightlifting's like, no, I'm better.
Right.
Like track would be like that. Like I ran faster.
Yep.
Like put us next to each other.
Objective.
Right. And I started leaning into that a little bit, and I felt like, hey, there's nobody that can tell me, if I beat him, like nobody can take that away from me. Nobody can say, well, he's a great scorer, but this, right? And so that I think drew it to me. And I think also for me, at least, it was just a challenge that I never saw like a finite ending for, right? It was just always like, hey, you can always just try to add a kilo. Like you can always try to get a little bit better, right? Mm-hmm. And so anyways, I mean, that drew me to weightlifting. What do you think it was about weightlifting what kind of sucked you in?
Well, I mean, I compare a lot of things to sports. That's just, I just relate with it so much. And basketball specifically for me was the one thing that I loved the most. And I got blessed with a great coach in high school, right? He was a young guy. He was super energetic. And he was very much, he allowed us to play our game.
That's huge.
And
didn't
tried
turn
to
you into a
mold us
robot.
together. Right.
Yeah.
He would take the individuals and what they brought to the table, and he would make that work. Right. Like you said, it didn't seem political, right? It was if you contribute to this team in a positive way, you're going to get minutes. Mm-hmm. Right. It was very simple. And he allowed me to be creative and play to my strengths. And I really enjoyed that. And when I found weightlifting, there's in basketball, if you're 7 foot tall, it doesn't matter if you can, dribble between your legs really fast. You're going to play. You beat 99% of people automatically because you're 7 feet tall, right? In weightlifting, if you're short, you probably got a good squat, right? But your pull might lack a little bit. If you're tall, you might have trouble standing things up, but you're going to have a better pull, right? And maybe you're going to have better overhead if you have good, elbow extension. If not, all of those things, you can play to your strengths, right? And try to, diminish your weaknesses. But I kind of took that where it was I can put my own twist on it, right? Like you said, and kind of make it my own thing. And as much as, I took from John North's technique and Donnie Schenkel's attitude and Wes Kitt's, movements and all those things, I take that, try it out, this or that, and then if it works or if I can, make a tweak on it to work for me, then I can do that. You know what I mean? And so I just like the fact that you have to be dialed in all the time. You're never given, a certain weight, no matter what you've hit. You got to be locked in. A 120 snatch is heavy, no matter what you snatch. You know what I'm saying?
Even if you're snatching 170, it's like if you don't concentrate, you're going to miss 120.
Yeah, you got to be locked in. And, I think with other things, especially team sports, if there's 11 other guys out there or 10 other guys, you're playing football, you can kind of pull back and, let the other guys do work. And, if you're pushing a sled with 5 guys, you can kind of just lean on it and let the other dudes push it. It's weightlifting is not. Right. That's not the case at all. It's just you.
I think the other thing for me was like, being like the leader of the team in basketball, being the point guard, like, the eyes are all on you, but you're also at the whim of your teammates. And if they aren't playing and trying the way they need to, like it reflects on you and, you're not going to have the same success. Versus weightlifting, it's like, okay, well, I already had all the spotlight on me anyways. Like if I'm going to put in all this work, I want the pressure on me because I put the pressure on myself. I think that's the other thing too, is like there's types of athletes who want the pressure. They want the spotlight. They want the credit, but they also want the blame, like that kind of thing. And then there's athletes who they're kind of just, they're there and they're, like for example, it's like, basically when they get the ball, they fucking pass the ball. Right. Like, and, I think weightlifting, it's like, dude, you go out on the stage, it's just you in the bar, and there ain't no hiding.
Right.
Right? Like, you can hide on a basketball court
Sure.
a little bit, right? You can definitely hide in certain sports. You can't hide in weightlifting. And it's like, but the point is like, it's okay. And I think it's okay to fail. And I think that, one of the other reasons that I was a good weightlifter was that, like, I wasn't worried about going out there and missing a lift. Like, of course I get nervous. But one thing that I struggle with coaching is trying to instill this mentality that, like, going out there and you might miss a lift on your opener, and you can't let that, like, freak you out and tell you that you don't have it in you today. It's just, people miss lifts, right? Like, you miss shots, like, and I think that's what, when you, like, for me, I was a very high volume shooter, I would say, right? And you're going to miss a lot of shots, right? And you don't let that bother you. You come down and you know that, like, just because you missed the last shot doesn't mean you're going to miss this shot, right? And I think so that helps me. That helped me with weightlifting, where I definitely was a guy who I had to open up pretty heavy if I wanted to win meets. Like, a lot of guys, they go in and they want to go 6 for 6, and for me, I was like, I'm here to medal, and to me, 4th place is like last place, so I'm going to take these lifts. And like I said, I mean, there was meets. One of my best meets, I went 2 for 6, but the 3rd lift was more like 10 more kilos than the first lift, right? Each time. So it was almost like I went 6 for 6 because I went up each time, right? If that makes sense?
Yeah,
so I think I got that from basketball and not being afraid to fail, or baseball, same thing, right? You're going up there and you're going to strike out half the time, right? So
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about your training.
Let's do it.
So, I mean, weightlifting training is really hard, right? What kind of take us through what you started out when you were just training in the garage with AJ? If you can talk a little bit about how that changed when you went down to Texas, and then maybe what it's like now.
Sure. Yeah. So 5 years ago, it's been 5 years since, I started training. And obviously, if you're intentional, your numbers go up right after 5 years. But the biggest changes that have happened for me have been between the years. And, first starting out in the garage, that was when it was just crank the music and we go heavy. And I have videos from 2020 of me missing 90 kilo snatch 15 times, like in one session, right? So that was the mentality. It was like, we go hard, make, it doesn't matter. We're going to max out. We're going to go heavy. We're going to have fun. We're going to drink some beers afterwards. We're going to do it the next day, right? And that's what it was. So when it got more into looking at competitions, right, and competing, that's when I ended up moving down to San Antonio. And so the goal then was suck less, because I sucked really bad.
Well, all you knew at the beginning, like, because you didn't know anything. Like,
no.
You didn't know anything about training, right?
No.
So nothing. It's like the way
I just watched John North videos.
Well, so what you're doing,
that's what we would do.
Exactly, right?
That was it.
But if you don't know anything, like, let's say you're a carpenter or something, and you need to get this nail in the hole, or you need to do that. Like, you use the brute force method. Like, if you hit it enough times,
sure,
it will go in the hole.
Yeah, it might be sideways, but it's going to go in there.
Yeah, you might screw up everything around it,
right?
And the nail might be bent as shit when it goes in, but eventually you'll get it in the hole,
sure,
right? And that's like the brute force method. And because again, you know nothing else. Right. You haven't had time to take a step back and learn how, hey, maybe if I learned how to hit the nail right, it would go in a lot smoother and I wouldn't bend it along the way. Right. And that's what you probably did when you went down to Texas.
Sure. Yeah. The first meet. So I met Brittany in Detroit at U25 Nationals 2021. My max snatch, I had snatched one time, I think 2 weeks prior was 110. And that was like, I think a 5 kilo PR that I hadn't hit anything over 100 in probably months. I don't know. And so with a 110 PR that I literally, I think I actually attempted it 11 times. I think that was the number. That's how many times it took me to hit 110. My opener is 106, right? 2 weeks later.
95, 96%, something like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, something ridiculous. And again, it didn't register. There was no thought behind like, oh, this is risky, this is this or that. It's like, no, why would I not open as heavy as I possibly could? Like that's the whole point, right? It's just going heavy. And so anyways, moving out of San Antonio, Brittany, she did a really good job of training the mental side where we're not going to miss, more than 3 times before moving on.
Right.
And we're not going to get frustrated if something feels heavy, and I would, my first couple months in San Antonio, there were probably a handful of times where I would drop the bar and leave. I would just walk out because I would get so frustrated because I see 10 girls that are snatching and clean and jerking more than me, and I'm not joking.
They have a good girls team. Yeah,
they're incredible. And it was just, getting hammered into my head that you can't let your emotions get the best of you, especially in weightlifting. And so I think that's what I learned the most in San Antonio was having a good community, a supporting community around you. Obviously a great coach, and just learning how to do weightlifting in all aspects, mentally, physically, technique. Obviously my technique improved just so much. It was unbelievable, starting from 0 or negative maybe. And then going to Knoxville, it was kind of a shock actually, because, I was going in expecting every session to just be, kind of like the garage sessions. It was like, we're going super hard, music's loud, 600 milligrams caffeine, like every time, where it was very much the opposite actually. I remember, I think it was my second week there on a Tuesday morning, I was cranking up Big X the Plug, and Morgan's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, it is Tuesday morning. Let's put some country on, turn the music down and focus on your technique. You know what I'm saying? And it was, again, like I'd have a 75% power snatch, on Tuesday morning, and 60% felt real heavy.
Yep.
Well, I was killing myself trying to get to that 75%. And again, Morgan West would be like, dude, it's just working on technique right now. Like, drop the weight, move it well, and let's put your focus on the heavy days that matter. Right. And so, in Knoxville, I think what I learned the most was learning to train smart, I guess. Right. It's like, if you've got a certain percent, you don't need to die trying to hit this percent. Right. Some days you're not going to feel great. You didn't get good sleep, whatever it is. Maybe you need to drop it down. And on the other hand, if I've got 85% snatch, on a Friday, and I'm cooking and I smoke 85, bro, go up.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like the freedom.
Yeah, the same. It ain't written in stone, right? Like,
sure. Yeah.
I think so. I see that a lot, right? When the athletes that are banging I call it like banging your head against the wall, like you're playing AC/DC, like, every day, cranking it up. What I know about that athlete is, one, they're either not actually training that hard day in and day out, like their frequency is probably pretty low to be able to do that, or they're going to be burnt out in no time, right? And what I always tell the athletes is like, for me at least, when I was weightlifting, like, it was my job. Like, I wanted it to be my job. I mean, I literally own a gym now. Like, it was like, hey, this is a job. If you want it to be a job, you got to treat it like a job. And the way I would tell people is like, if you're going to treat this like a job, well, when you go into work every day, do you need to play freaking, corn, like to go to work and to get hyped up to do whatever you got to do? No, you go there, you have a task list that you have to get done, and you get it done. In certain days, you're going to be a little sharper than others. And on those days, maybe you get more done. And the days that you aren't feeling it, you get a little bit less done. But the point is, you go to work every day, no matter what. And that's, I think, the biggest thing in weightlifting is like, it's about going to work every day, no matter what. And like, people, they always ask me, like, do you take pre-workout? And like, do you do, like, we drink our fair share of caffeine, but that's just to get through the day. But like, again, I'll be in there listening to country music most of the time in the mornings when I'm training. And it's just because I'm there to put in the work. I'm not there to PR every day.
Sure.
Right. And again, that's because I'm actually training hard. Like, and I think you probably would say right now that you're training hard, like, or maybe harder than you ever did when you got to, Knoxville, but still hard and intense maybe is not the same thing, right? Like for me, like I do a lot of volume. Like that's where I see a lot of my success is like, I would say compared to other people, I do a lot of training volume. Well, when you do a lot of training volume, the intensity is generally lower, right? So again, do I need to crank the music up to get through 10 sets of squats that are all at like a maybe 70%? No, like I just need to go in, do the work, and then move on with my day.
Sure.
Right. And I think that's where I see the best athletes is they're 90% of the time they're doing that. And then when the time is right, they strike.
Yeah. And look, especially if you're competing, when you go out for a third attempt clean and jerk, they're going to have Carly Rae Jepsen playing. And, you're in the warm-up area. There's going to be 3 coaches 2 feet in front of you that don't care, and it's like if you need your heavy music and you have to use the same bar and you've got to have a clear line of sight, like you are now adding potential problems that you're going to have to deal with at the biggest stage, right? Whatever meet, you're doing if you plan on competing. And I think that can just be eliminated by, like you said, you treat this as like, I'm going to show up, I'm going to do what I need to do. And guess what? People are going to be in my way and music might not be what I want to be, but it doesn't matter. Like Morgan, I love Morgan because we can just talk weightlifting and it's just easy. I think we get each other a lot and, we have kind of the same mentality and he'll tell you the same thing. When the shoe's going on, the excuses are done, right? You can complain and bitch about your knee and you can talk about how your back hurts and your shoulder's bothering you when you do a snatch. But 135 doesn't care if your shoulder hurts. It's 135.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter. So your shoes go on, and if you feel like you can't train or your knee hurts that bad, take your shoes off, right? Go home, right? This is weightlifting. Like You're not – when have you ever competed at 100% healthy? Like
never, ever.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when are you – I can't request my favorite song when I go out. It's just like I'm not – the platform in the back room, it's going to be sideways.
Yep.
You are going to have to load each side different probably. It's like expect these things to happen. And I don't even know what you were talking about, but
so what I was saying too, like, and I totally agree. I think that what you're saying is like a lot of times people want to train in like perfect conditions. Sure. And that kind of goes back to the music being super loud, like being, extremely caffeinated. And so here's the thing. Then you go to the meet and you don't really get a boost in performance. So, or you get, like you said, if now the music is not what you used to training in that you need, and the bar is not the bar that you're used to training on, your focal point is not the same, and whatever, you actually see a dip in performance. Where one thing that I really prided myself on when I competed was I always was better in competition than I generally was in training. Like, I always tell people this story, but my first ever nationals was in 2017, which is, wow, a long time ago. The week out, like it's pretty common to try to hit openers about a week out, right? And so I went in and I wanted to open at a 135 snatch. Again, this is my first ever nationals. I'd only started weightlifting like 8 months before this. And it took me 3 tries that day, that Saturday, a week before, to hit 125. And I'm like, I at least need to hit 125 today. And I still opened at 135, and I made it, by the way. But anyway, so then clean and jerk, I think my plan was to open at 165, and it took me 3 tries, I'm pretty sure, to hit 150. And I'm just like, dude, because I was just beat up, right? Just in the absolute depths of training. then let the taper happen, let all this stuff, let my recovery happen, and then get all this adrenaline on game day. And I ended up doing 143, 171. So I went, it took me 3 tries to hit 125 and 50, and I went 43, 71. Mm-hmm. Right. And so the point though is, like, for me, another thing that I like to do is I basically just try to handcuff myself in training. And again, that's like, hey, I listen to country music. Like I'm, not like the week before I would try to really dial back the caffeine, if not get rid of it. Right. Just really try to handcuff myself almost. And then that way it was like, when I'm in the meet and I have all the caffeine, I feel great. Like then I perform. I would rather train in like a more relaxed and subtle environment than this booming environment all the time.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, man. Especially training at a CrossFit gym, right? I'm the only guy that does, like, the Olympic stuff there. And I'm always in my corner, and there's always a class going on. And a lot of time, it's right after I get off work, I go to the gym, which is around 5, which, as you know, there's right? No one ever there at 5, right? 5 p.m. No, it's packed, every day. And they got a kids class and a high school class and a CrossFit class. And, it's like, dude, if I miss this snatch behind me, like a 7-year-old's going to lose their head. But at the same time, if I'm about to, attempt a 150 block snatch, like, big PR, all this, nobody cares. Like nobody,
right.
They don't even know, most of them, they don't know what 2 reds and a yellow, they don't care.
They don't understand how impressive it is.
Sure.
Or they might walk up to you and say something right before you're about to lift.
Right. Oh, dude, 100%. I mean, one of the funniest things happened to me the other week. And again, when I say this, at no point am I putting any blame on this lady, right? This is just how things work. I'm going to attempt like a 240 squat or something, or no, it's 230 for a double, and which is, that would have been it was a PR, and and I slapped 230 on there, and I'm kind of walking around getting fired up. Well, there's 40 bikes, right? There's 40 of them in a line, and this lady picks the one bike that is 5 feet in front of me, facing me, in the squat rack. And so I took out my headphone, I'm like, look, I'm about to probably scream in your face right now. Like, and she's like, oh, that's okay. I've got kids, whatever. It's like, okay.
So she didn't get the hint.
No. And you know what? That's fine. She doesn't
know you.
She didn't have to. Yeah. And she's doing her own thing, and it's like, in that moment, 5 years ago, I would have been like, oh, I need to unrack this backwards, and I can't look at this later. She's going to throw me. It's like, dude, it goes back to training, competitions. It's never going to be what you want it to be.
Yep.
And if you're anticipating that, I think you're at an advantage.
I think that's why, too, when you come and train here, usually you hit some big lifts.
Sure.
It's just that slight change, right? But you wouldn't get that if you always trained here, right? At least you wouldn't have that big boost when you do come, right? It's the same thing when you go to a meet. Like, I trained in the college, when I first started weightlifting, like, I trained in the college, like, rec center. Like, and the platforms were deadlift platforms. They weren't, like, weightlifting platforms.
Yeah.
They were, like, this wide, right?
You better stay balanced.
Yeah, exactly, right? And you weren't supposed to drop weights. You weren't supposed to have chalk. I did both those things, but I hid my chalk, and it was kind of funny. Like, I was like the chalk bandit. But the bars didn't spin. They were big, thick pound bumper plates, right? But again, like, I think then I would go to a meet and everything was perfect and it felt nice. But again, people, they go back and they want training to be perfect because I think they need that for their confidence a little bit, right? And I think that's where, going back to playing sports, like, I really didn't care too much about how I practiced. Like, not like how hard I tried, but how confident I was in like how well that I played and practiced the day before. It didn't matter if I scrimmaged and couldn't make anything. I was still probably, like, that had no effect on what I thought I was going to do in the game the next day.
Right. That was not the case for me in high school, middle school, right? Eighth grade baseball, I would cry if I struck out, and I'm not joking.
Really?
Oh yeah, dude. If I would miss 3 shots in a row in a game, I'm done. Head was down. Like, and that, again, when I went to San Antonio, that came with me. That none of that really changed. And so that is something I had to overcome that. And look, I loved sports. I was pretty good at them, all those things. But by no means did I have it all figured out or whatever.
Weightlifting will teach you that. It's either going to teach you
or you're done.
It's going to burn you out, one of the two. Like, you're going to figure it out, right? So what would you say, like, let's go a little bit more specific on your training. Like, you talked about kind of each thing you learned from the spots you were at, but could you talk a little bit, maybe, hey, how frequently are you squatting right now? Basically, you got to think, we got weightlifters that listen to this. We also have, youth athletes, right? High school kids. I want them to understand what hard training maybe really looks like. Cause I just don't, the biggest thing that I see is they don't understand. Like, and I was right there with them. Like, when you first start out, you don't know what's possible. Like, I mean, there was periods of my life where I was squatting every single day, right? And I just don't think that, like, a kid thinks once a week is like absolutely tops you can squat, or, a certain amount of volume or a certain amount of reps, a certain amount of weight. Like, I think it's important for them to understand what is actually possible.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when it first started in the gym, we snatched every single day and we clean and jerked every single day. And we either front squatted or back squatted every single day. We did, the first October came around when I was weightlifting, we did Squattober, and we ran a Smolov, the legit Smolov. And AJ, I tell you, man, that was tough. I mean, that was 5 days a week. I think I went from a 185 squat to a 205 squat in a month.
Yep.
And that was just strictly because I had never put myself through that intense, voluminous training in my life. And, again, I was 22, so I could handle that pretty well. And I would say any middle school, high schooler kid, you have no problem squatting heavy, right? Because it's relative.
But that's the thing they don't realize is it is relative, but it also is absolute, meaning, like, I don't care how strong you are. Like, you can squat, your best squat's 250, right? Back squat.
Yep.
So 250 kilos, so 550 pounds. That is harder on like, let's say that's 100% of your 1 rep max. That is harder on your body than somebody who squats 100 kilos, but that's still 100% of their max.
Sure.
That's still much harder on your body than 100 kilos is on there, even though it's the relative percentage to your max is still the same.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think that what you're saying is that, hey, look, the weights, the absolute weights that you're using are still relatively low.
Sure. Yeah. If you told me right now I had to do 8 sets of 3 at 90%, I would say, that's not.
But at one point in Smolov, you did that,
that's what
and
we
it
were
wasn't
doing.
that bad, right?
No.
You did it. It was your day 4 of the.
Dude, that program. So I mean, I remember racking the bar and falling into the beanbag, and then when AJ was done, he would tap me on the shoulder, and I'd get up and go do my next set. Like, it was brutal, but you can handle it because your potential is, between your true strength threshold and where you're actually at is such a big gap. You can handle that.
So that's what you're describing right now is exactly what I was trying to explain earlier when I'm saying, like, basically my training, if I had to explain it, is like perpetual small off cycles.
Sure.
Just because, like, my leg strength was always so challenging for me to gain. And if I didn't do a lot of volume, it would just go away. But anyways, so those sets of 3, you could, if you really wanted to, you could do more than 3 every set.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
If you really got your music going and you hit your head against the wall, you could do more than 3. Mm-hmm. But again, having to do 10 sets of those, and doing that every day, basically. Right. That's where I mean, like, that is the hardest training for me. Like, it's the monotonous, the voluminous. It's like, I have another set of this. Right. I could do 1 max out set. Yeah, that was hard, but, like,
it's over.
It's over, right? You will be on that squat rack for 1 to 2 hours to get that training session done. And the stronger you get, the longer it takes. Sure. So, like, if you're a kid, maybe an hour. For us, like that 10 sets of 3-day that's a 2-hour workout at 90%,
Right.
right? Just the squats. And so anyways, that's what I meant by like the hardest training is usually the training that's like you're slightly submaximal, but it's just a ton of it.
Right. Yeah. And that's how it started. That's how it started for us. Tons of volume, and a lot of squats, a lot of pulls, just a lot of everything. Going down to San Antonio, Brittany she might be the best in the game at individualizing a program. All right. So she's got, a bare bones program, and literally with 300 athletes, like she'll put people in groups. This is what they need. This, and she'll make tweaks and adjustments. And I would text her this, boom, adjust, all of these things. And her training style is very much pushing the threshold of lifts, combining lifts, right? Like a lot of 2+2s, a lot of
complexes.
Sure. A lot of clean, push, press, jerk, all the things, putting a lot of them together, and just building confidence. If I can do a 2+2 at 150, like surely I can clean and jerk, 160 for a second. You know what I'm saying?
But that's what you're doing is you're handcuffing yourself in that complex.
Right.
Like essentially what I was talking about earlier.
Yep.
It's a way of like making training harder, making the lift harder. And then when you're allowed to go out on the platform and just do one clean, one jerk, it feels like nothing.
Yeah, dude. We'd do cycles where, we'd front squat and then do heavy cleans, and it's simply because this is going to make the clean suck way more. And then when you don't have to front squat, before you clean, guess what? Your mindset going into this is like,
it's mostly
I don't have to squat before I do it. This is going to be way easier. Yeah, 100%. And that's why I said when I was there, it's just a lot of mental progress, right? And so, that was San Antonio. I was doing a lot of complexes, right?
Real quick, I want to.
Sure.
So complexes, we do a lot of. I have my athletes do a lot of complexes. Funny, I don't do a lot of complexes when I'm coaching myself. The reason is, in my opinion, complexes are the best way to teach technique, because what you're doing is you're having them do a complex that's essentially I call it a self-working magic trick. So, for example, there's variations in the complex. I have one of my athletes doing like no hook, no feet. This is an athlete that likes to bump the bar out away from them with their hips. The no hook part makes it really hard to bang the bar because you'll feel like you're going to let go of the bar. And so it basically self-working magic trick. It makes you kind of make a smoother, closer pull, and then not moving your feet. Again, same thing. If you bump it forward, you can't jump forward and catch it. So anyways, that variation is teaching a thing that I can tell the athlete, hey, don't bump it forward,
Right.
But that doesn't make a good coach. Just being able to see a problem. A lot of people can see that's a problem.
You're missing your jump shot to the right. Stop doing that.
Yeah, stop doing that, right? And I joke and I say stuff like that a lot. Right. And that's a funny, joke. But the point is like complexes do the same. So like, let's say we have an athlete that doesn't finish their pull very well. We might have them do like when they go, like I see personally a lot of athletes that when you have them do a power snatch or a power clean, they'll finish the pull very well because you have to. And then you go to a full and they don't, right? They cut their pull real bad because they're focused on getting under the bar. So like a power plus a full or some amount of powers plus fulls are good because you do the power, you finish your pull, and then you go, okay, I want you to pull that bar exactly like you just pulled that last one, right? Don't change anything, right? And so anyways.
That is a great point and something that in San Antonio, right, the intention, that was a huge focus was, we're doing, 1+3 or whatever we're doing. Why are we doing that, right? And I never thought about it. Like, it's like, I have 1+3, I'm just going to do 1+3. Okay, hold on. Why, what is the point here?
Right.
What are we trying to work on? So at the end of this cycle, I've got another tool or cue in my brain or whatever it is that you can use moving forward, right? And so, yeah, very intentional when you're doing those kind of things. If you're doing a power plus a full, and you don't have someone telling you, hey, you're doing this because your pull sucks, well, then they're just going to do a power and then cut a shitty snatch.
Yes. They're going to do exactly what they've always done.
Right, yeah.
I think the other thing with Brittany, too, it's like a lot of her athletes are probably in that intermediate phase where they are, because I would say when you went there, you're probably an intermediate.
I sucked.
Well, you sucked, but you were a great athlete. So maybe you quickly progressed to
bad
an intermediate
weightlifter.
So the point is like you got to improve your technique.
Yes.
You had to improve your technique.
Yeah, there's nothing I could do to not improve my technique at that point.
So you had to do complexes though, right? Then as you get better, the natural progression, again, for me, like I don't do a lot of complexes anymore because, again, I understand. I think complexes help when you don't fully understand your technique and why you do certain things and you don't understand the feeling you're supposed to have. It basically, they make you feel certain things. Mm-hmm. So, for example, another athlete that maybe if they bang it out forward, we might have them do a high pull plus a snatch where they have to like high pull, keep the bar close. And then I'll tell them, hey, feel that high pull when you're snatching. Like what the one you just did like a second ago, do that exact same thing when you're snatching, right, on the next lift. And so anyways, that teaches technique. Once you get better and your technique's more comfortable, now you can make those, my point is now you can make those changes without having to do a complex to do it. You can just think about, hey, keep it closer or whatever.
And I'll go a step further here. And I know we're kind of getting off track, but in life, just life in general, right? If I'm training every day and I'm going in, okay, well, why am I doing this? What is the reason I'm doing this for, right? Well, for me at least, you can't help but to then leak that into your everyday life where, okay, I feel tired every morning, right, for my AM session. Well, you're going to bed at 1:30, right? You're eating ice cream until, you go home the next night and you go, okay, I'm going to be intentional here. I'm going to set myself up for success, right? And that's the other reason, I love weightlifting. That's a whole nother tangent, but it's just so applicable, right, to real life. But I get, back to what we were talking about. Then, a lot of complexes, San Antonio, did a lot of technique work. And then of course, got stronger just because I was on a bar all the time, know? And then getting to Knoxville, it was, okay, I have semi-respectable numbers now. Where do you go from there? Well, you show up and you put your shoes on, you don't complain, and you get through it, and it was just, Wes as a coach was different than Brittany because he's a player coach, right? When I moved there, he's prepping for the Olympics, right? And so he's not sitting there with a, like a PVC pipe and, doing the whole side head bend and watching you do this. No, like he's training. You know what I'm saying? Like he's training for something pretty important. He doesn't have time to sit here and tweak all these things, right? So it's almost like you need to be self-automated here and correct your technique on your own. And you need to figure out how to do that, right? And so lots of recording your lift and looking over it, and lots of doing a bad snatch and looking over at Morgan, and he would just say, get your hips back, and that was it. It's just like at a certain point, if you're in the NBA and you're missing your jump shots right, your coach actually can say, hey, you're missing right, stop doing that. And you should be able to know, right, how to fix that at that point.
And that's what I'm saying. I think you went through a very nice natural progression where...
Right, we talked about this a couple weeks ago.
You train on your own, which I actually think that's a good way to start for somebody like you that's athletic, I think, because you start learning, you experiment and you learn. Even as a coach, when I get brand new athletes in, one of the things that I try not to do is overcoach. Because I always say, like, I'll hand them a bar and I'll say, all right, I want you to do a snatch the way that you think you should do a snatch. Mm-hmm. And the reason I do that is because they're going to do some things naturally correct. Like they're going to do a couple things that are actually correct and they're not going to have to think about doing them. They're just going to do it. right? And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to tell them, hey, I'm just going to change. I'm going to fix what's wrong, right? I'm going to keep what's right and I'm going to fix what's wrong. But if I go in and I say, hey, here's how you do it, they're not going to think about all the things that they're doing. They're just, all they're doing is they're thinking about what I'm telling them, right? And they probably won't do the things that they were going to do naturally correct because they're busy thinking about, oh, I need to do this with my elbow and I need to do that. And you and I both know that the best athletes in the world, some of them, they were able to pick things up very naturally and they don't have to think about it. And that's what makes them so good,
Sure.
right? Like, and that's what makes some great athletes bad coaches, because they aren't able to relate or teach what they know because they just did it naturally, right? So again, as a coach, I let athletes show me first, and then all we do is we correct errors. We don't teach everything from like a system, like, hey, this is step 1, this is step 2. It's just fixing errors. And I think so. Anyways, Brittany took that and fixed your errors, fixed a lot of errors, right? And then you moved into Wes, where again you were a little bit more advanced of an athlete now, and you have that player coach where you're almost like looking at how he works and how he moves through his life. Absolutely. Right? And you're learning from that. You're learning to be a professional.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think that's where a lot of guys in the NBA, I think it's a very similar thing. If I'm being perfectly honest, and I think people should need to understand this, I don't think the coaches are coaching as much as you think they are in the NBA. Like, I heard an interview with Jimmy Butler one time, and he was like, what's the difference between college and the NBA? And he goes, well, here's the thing. We make a lot more money than the coach does. And he goes, so it's a little bit of a different relationship, right? Like, and they're all better players probably than the coaches at that point too. Sure. So again, I'm not saying there's no coaching, but I think a lot of it is more of just, hey, here's how you be a professional. Here's how you go through your own practice. I maybe not showing you, like, my dad was literally in the garage with me, like moving my elbow in on shots. Like, that's not what's happening at the NBA level, at least not from your head coach, right? And probably not what's happening with Wes a ton, right? It's more about the big things. Here's the boulders, and then lets you figure that out.
Right, absolutely. And yeah, aside from weightlifting, like he opened up his gym right after Morgan and I moved there, and look, same with Brittany. I mean, seeing the work ethic is really humbling. Number one, and it's just the savage consistency that ends up being what makes them the best at what they do, right? Is not because they are some weightlifting guru genius, right? It's because every single day they go in there with the mindset of, I'm looking to improve, no matter how small of a degree it is, in something, whether that is weightlifting or whether it's starting to go to bed a little early, or whether it's I need to eat breakfast. You know, it's like, I never saw Wes not come into the gym without a fat ribeye and some sweet potatoes. You know, it was like every single day. He never missed a day. And it wasn't like he ever was, I got to go kick that was just part of his life. Like, that's part of who he is. And that's, I think, why he's so successful, is because and I'll even say this for myself, like, I've never once had a problem showing up, right? That's never been the issue. I might go and say I've never missed a training session, like in the last 5 years, unless, you know, like Wednesdays, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., I'm working. So I can't.
Savage consistency. You said that. That's like, that's what that is, savage consistency.
It's savage. Like, and there is no whining. There is no, oh, I have to do. No, that's what you signed up for. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, not every weightlifter is looking to win nationals.
Well, there's it's the same thing about going to work. There's people who come to work every single day, no matter what. And then there's people who are going to use up every sick hour that they have. And, you know, they're going to try to game the system. Right. And it's just like, I mean, you know who's going to get the promotion. You know who's going to go further in life, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, you just wait a couple years and you'll see. You know, it's pretty obvious. And I think it's even more obvious in a sport like weightlifting, right? I have zero zero bad things to say about the athlete that just wants to stay in shape and move, and they think weightlifting is fun, right? And haven't hit a PR in 12 years. Like, that's not, if that is your goal, then by all means, like, do that. But if you are trying to win nationals, or you're trying to make an international team, or you're trying to go to the Olympics, right? There is no thought of whether I'm going in today or, this or that. That is secondhand. I'm doing this no matter what, right? You don't think about it.
My dad used to say, so when we would go play golf, like, golf was kind of the sport that I took the least seriously, even though I wish in hindsight I would have taken it a lot more seriously, because I was probably built to play it a lot more than the sports that I did take seriously. But anyways, like, it was a sport I played over the summer when I was out of season or whatever. And anyways, like, I would take long breaks from playing, and we'd go out and play. And my dad was a very good golfer, and I wouldn't play very good, right? The first time back, for sure, right? And I would get really frustrated because, like, basketball, I could pick it up and I could probably play halfway decent the first time. But anyways, he would say, like, you have to quit expecting, like, to come out here and play perfectly when you haven't put in any time. And it was a twofold thing. He was wanting me to try to have fun and enjoy myself while I was there. So he's like, quit expecting, to play perfectly today. Sure. Like, have fun. But two, like, it was a shot on, like, hey, if you want to expect this out of yourself, right, then you have to put in the work.
Right.
And so it's kind of the same thing that you're getting at, is like, it's okay to not, like, for me, like, he would basically say, hey, it's okay to play golf recreationally, but you just you can't have these expectations.
Absolutely.
It's okay to weightlift recreationally, but don't have these expectations.
Right.
If this is what you want, here's what's required. Right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So we end every show. First of all, I want to do two things. One, I don't think we talked about your numbers. What are your best, like, lifts right now?
Right. So my best snatch from the floor is 145.
Was that here?
That was in Cedar Falls.
Okay.
Yeah. So 145 from the floor. Hit a 150 block snatch the other week, which was huge. Back squat 250, front squat 200. Clean and jerk 180, clean 190. And then I think we're doing some heavy jerks this cycle, so we'll see what that ends up being. I haven't hit a heavy jerk in a minute, and that was 180 from the blocks. That was in Knoxville. So.
And those are, by the way, for our kids, those are all in kilos, right? So 180 clean and jerks, 396
The other day, the lady asked at the CrossFit gym, what do you snatch? And I put it in pounds for her.
Yeah.
I said 319. She goes, kilos? And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's funny when you get somebody who's, like, expecting kilos, but you don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
So very credible source. We should have touched on that at the beginning. Second thing, we end every show now. It's called the Unfair Advantage Podcast. The idea is we ask the guest, like, what is your unfair advantage? And what I want you to think about when you say this is, like, what's the thing that you think that you do differently than most people that allows you to be successful? What's the one trait that you have that you think that is maybe superior to a lot of the people you know? Or it could be something you developed. It could be something you think you were born with.
Can I give you two answers?
Sure.
Okay. First one we already touched on. I don't think I've ever thought about not training, right? Or just taking a week off, or skipping out on a set of squats, right? Have I before? Yeah, sure. But it's not like, that's not ever a question for me, is am I going to go to the gym today, right? Or am I going to do all these sets? Like, for some reason, I don't have any problems with being there. I love it, right? And I think developing just such a drive and a want, and honestly, like, a need to get better at this sport. A lot of things that I think people struggle with showing up, is 80% of it. I've never had a problem with that, right? And number two, less about me, more about the community that I've connected myself to throughout the last 5 years. And number one, it starts with my family. And that is something that God blessed me with. I don't deserve, these people in my life, talking about my family specifically. My parents they were athletes, and they did well, but it was never like pressured on me to
Same.
excel, in any I loved it, and they saw I loved it, and they let me do it, and they let me go. And my parents, my siblings, 4 younger siblings, and there have been some low points in my life, and honestly, I would think back to just letting them down, or just what they're up to, what they would want for me, what I want for them, and just having such a good relationship with them has helped me get through some tough times. And more than that, I have cousins that I'm close with. I've got, the people at this gym are awesome. The people at the Cedar Falls gym, awesome. I've built a great friendship with a lot of people in San Antonio. Same thing, a lot of connections in Knoxville. And I think just having a support system like that, right, is just about as potent as any pre-workout, you can have.
Well, you mentioned how that wasn't really about you, and maybe, having an awesome family, because I'm right there with you. I feel the same. Like, that's really where everything starts and stems from, is like, I was blessed with an awesome, supportive family. They've always told me I could do whatever I wanted, put your mind to it. They've always supported me, right? Maybe that's not about you, but you sought out all this help, right? In this coaching, like, you were the one who was willing to pick up. And I think that's the unfair advantage that you have, is the ability to pick up what you're doing.
Sure.
and take drastic measures, move across the country to learn from somebody, right? And you've done that multiple times, right? And I think that's an unfair advantage, is like your willingness to take risks, maybe, take chances and make big changes to learn. Because I think a lot of people don't. They aren't, like, again, they want to get better. But they aren't willing to do that.
Sure.
Right. And you were willing to do that.
Sure.
Cool, dude. Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think this was probably our best one ever. I really do.
Great.
I like
awesome.
to talk weightlifting. So.
Yeah, me too, man.
Cool.
Me too.
We'll do it again.
Yes, sir.
Peace.
See ya.